Okay, so we have Luke here, and Luke is kind of a perfect example of someone that came to Bali a few years ago and has been getting engaged and doing a lot of things. And we want to have someone from the community also sharing, you know, their experience, their story, what they have done. And we wanted some entertainment as well. So we invited Luke. that has all of these qualities in one person, you know. So, Luke, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Okay, good.
Okay, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. I want to try and make it sort of useful. I'm Luke. I've been here for 5 years. We took 1 year out when it was COVID and sort of ran around the world and did a few things, then came back to Bali and caught COVID. That was kind of fun. My preferred pronouns are he and him, but if you ever say my name, I want it said at double the volume. So saying, how's it going? Luke! That's how I prefer to be addressed. Okay, so that's just to get that out of the way. Good, perfect. Yeah, the first time I came here, I came into the bridge, and actually it was Chris who said, look, time kind of flies, right? You come in here and you think, I really want to do something, and then you kind of wonder what you're going to do. Then it's 6 months later, and then it's kind of time for you to leave if you're here for 1 year. And so there is a real sort of, there's a real logic in starting something quite quickly. You know, my first businesses that I started were, you know, just little things. And one of the things I noticed when I listened to these two talks were, if I'm in the head of, you know, some of the people I helped to grow businesses, it sounds kind of complicated. And it sounds, especially if you have a little business, my goodness, this sounds a bit too complicated. And one thing I think you need to be as an entrepreneur is you need to be willing to take risks. So the first business I had when I was 17 that made a little bit of money was, you know, I went into Thailand, found the place that sold the best fake Ralph Lauren shirts, had 2 giant suitcases, and walked through Amsterdam airport with all these fake Ralph Laurens, which was totally illegal. But I made a lot of money selling it to Dutch fraternities because they wanted nice shirts and they didn't want to pay any money. It's a good sort of Dutch trait. But I work with a lot of doctors, you know, and I'm trying to start a sort of a med tech business, but doctors are just so hard to work with because they don't want to take risks. You know, doctors, academics, lawyers, they have a hard time sort of doing something a little bit illegal at first. And so I want to talk a little bit about that because sometimes it's okay to bend the rules a little bit when you're starting out. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the businesses that I've helped start here while I'm here. Some of them are kind of big now, but there are some who are pretty small, and I think a lot of people are just thinking, I want to do kind of a small business. My cousin Naomi lived in Uganda, and she went out there with her husband who was working, and she was a trailing spouse. Then she had 2 kids, and she felt kind of isolated, and she was sort of depressed about being in Uganda and thought, I don't really like it. You know, I'm stuck at home, I'm not really engaging. And then she started a clothing company. So she went and found out who makes these clothes. So she went to this factory of sort of local women who make, you know, T-shirts, and she goes, all right, how can we do this? She found a designer, she put the designs on. She created, you know, a line of this stuff. She put a website together. She went to some trade shows of people who do children's clothing. And then she sent some, you know, shirts to her mum in England who received them in the mail and then posted them out to people in England who went on the website and said, I want these clothes. And she never really made any money. But she was super happy, and she was super engaged, and she was paying good wages to the women who were doing the shirts. And, you know, she saw her friends' kids wearing the shirts, and they were on Instagram and stuff. And the point was, it was a super fulfilling exercise. And what I noticed when I was in the bridge 2-3 years ago, when I was sort of sitting here, and then Cal would come and say, come and do this talk on, you know, something that I would have zero interest in. But I went anyway because I was forced to. I was bullied into going to the talk. And there's a lot of people searching for sort of self-help and you know, what shall I do? And you know, and they're kind of, like I was when I first arrived in Bali, a little bit lost, what to do. And what I always say to them is, you can go to all these courses, and that's good, and it's fantastic to go to them. But if you start a business, all of those things will go away because you'll get busy. You'll be doing the trade shows. You'll be like your friend, traveling all around Indonesia. And so it's a really nice antidote to things. And I think whenever I first start talking to somebody about what kind of business they want, the question is often, do you need to make money? I mean, some people do because the kids are here at the green school. A lot of people are saying, I need to stay at the green school, so I need to make some money so I can pay for the next year. So that's important. You know, if you don't need to make money, you've got a real flexibility, right? You can do lots of really good purpose-driven things. But, you know, purpose-driven things also make money. So whether you need to make money or not is an important thing, you know, and then sort of breaking down some of those points before you think about what you're doing. So this is a Mangosteen. I made some investments in some of the companies I'll show you in a minute, plus some other companies, and they did okay, and some of them did pretty well actually. So I decided to put together a fund called Mangosteen Venture Studio, where I build companies with my money and with money of my investors, and then we grow those companies and raise more money with them. And so if you've sort of seen Silicon Valley type things, and it's sort of tech, and that I want them to be billion-dollar companies. But I also come across a lot of smaller companies, and I have invested in some smaller companies, some successful and some not. So I'll talk to you through about those. But my sort of experience here is coming from a position of starting a load of companies myself, starting and exiting my company before I moved to Bali, and then helping other people start theirs. And the one thing I would say, every time I help someone quit their corporate job and start a company, I go back to them in sort of 3 to 6 months and say, are you way poorer, working twice as hard, but way happier? And they always are. It's kind of like a religious experience. When you start your own company, it starts doing well, you feel amazing. These cheese things are going to go like crazy in Bali. Like it's going to be awesome. And you think it's a small thing. And I spoke to this lady last week, and she had these vegan snacks, you know, just in little sweet wrappers. And I thought, oh, that's nice vegan snacks. You know, it's pretty cool. You know, she was in Jakarta, she was in Papito, she was in Bintang. Her volumes were big, and she was making money. You know what I mean? The Bungkus lunches that we did, that we put together, that Dave said, why don't you do Bungkus lunches? This was last year when we needed to bridge the gap between Living Food Lab. You know, that would, if that continued, that was 20 million a month, you know, in profits for those Bungkus lunches with a little operation of 5 guys and some food. That's not a shitload of money, but it's money, right? It's not bad. So you don't underestimate that they can get bigger, but also don't feel they need to. You can keep your thing nice and small and have a great time with it. Like my cousin Naomi. If you don't need to make money, it's a wonderful thing. You can do some fantastic things. And I'm not sure how much money Sophie's making, but she's got a wonderful little business on the Sian Road of zero waste store. It's beautiful. You go in there, you just want to be in there lots, right? And is that going to be a billion-dollar company? Probably not, unless you franchise it all over the place in Indonesia. But it's a wonderful thing, and it gives you purpose and it keeps you busy. So what I try and do with Mangosteen Venture Studio is build purpose-driven companies. I find people who I think can execute really well, and I build companies with them. And then I put the team around them. I help them fundraise. I help them brand. I help their company look fantastic, and then it can, you know, then it can kind of set off. So the first one we did, one of the ones I did here, was called Sasha's Farms. This was in my first year of green school. This woman called Sasha Conlon used to run Sasha's Fine Foods in Singapore. So she couldn't find any good meat for her family, so she imported it from Australia and New Zealand, started this big company. Anyone who lives in Singapore might know it. Really, really beautiful. And she came to me and said, I want to start a company, but I want to have my own brand. So we set up this brand with her called Sasha's Farms. This is Living Food Lab's granola. You know, and we had some fun with finding these jars, you know, finding the cork tops, finding the labels, finding the granola lady, and then having the capacity of the granola people. You know, we gave these granola guys jobs when Living Food Lab closed as well, so that was kind of a nice thing to do. And then we're selling them in Singapore, right? It's expensive, but they look nice on the site, you know. So we're giving the brand, we're giving them a premium brand to bridge the gap between the true cost of food and you know, and what people can pay. So this is one starting here. Sasha's moving here actually. She's moved here last month because she's got sick of Singapore because it's gone absolutely crazy, and she's living in Canggu. So she's going to be working with me on this. And we've got kombucha, and we've got lots of kind of cool little things, and we sell them, and we're making no money. Like, we really aren't making any money. But we're speaking to this guy who might be able to scale it, and there are companies like this that do make some money, so we kind of work out what do they do and then copy it. This is my least successful of all the companies, but it's the most fun, because you're going and meeting little producers and letting them sell their food to rich Singaporeans, right, so that they can sustain. And there was a little salt guy, and he'd been mining salt. He goes into the sea with his bucket, gets the salt out, makes barley salt, and sells it. He's one of the last salt farmers north of sort of Ahmed, and he doesn't get much money. And so the more you can find guys like that and give their little cool food to people who don't know what the hell salt costs, and so I'll have it because the packaging's nice. You can help that guy, and that feels good, and it feels kind of fun to go up there and meet him as well. So that's the sort of thing we're doing with this company. This was set up actually in Singapore. So we set up a Singapore PTE Limited because Sasha was in Singapore. She did debate whether to set up here, Bali or Singapore, but she decided to do that. And it was also longer ago. Now that I hear lots more about how Indonesia is becoming, I'm considering much more and more setting these things up in Indonesia. Whoops, what was this? This was one that we launched actually launched a month ago live, but we've been working on it for a year. It's a digital bank for underbanked female entrepreneurs. So if you're a woman entrepreneur, often it's difficult to get a bank account. In fact, for a lot of women, it's difficult to get a bank account. In some countries, it's because the husband needs to sign off on it. You know, in Singapore, if my wife's a trailing spouse, it's hard for her to get one. She has to be, my name has to be attached to it. So we set up a digital bank so that people can download this app. And then, I had a really great woman yesterday who said, I love it. I used it. I've banked my helper. So she puts money and gives her helper money in Singapore. Helper sends money to the Philippines, which used to cost $8. Now it costs $3, right? So there's, and this is an example of it's a digital company that, if it works well, it could be super big. But this could easily be launched from Indonesia, right? There's plenty of these things in Indonesia launching now: digital credit, digital loans, digital finance, digital fintech. So don't think because you're in Indonesia you can't scale. You absolutely can scale. And there's a lot of digital companies like this kind of doing super well coming out of Indonesia. This is the last of three that I want to talk about, which we launched 3 months ago. And I'm not sure how many people know about carbon credits, but if you think about crypto and when people go onto their computers like super dorks and mine crypto, carbon credits is going to be the same, except for mining crypto will mean planting cucumber farms, wilding forests, doing all sorts of wonderful things. It's very easy to criticize how it's set up, but I actually think this is the one time where capitalism and eco warriors come together. And all of the conversations I have here with the team, just in that little hut over there, and with my carbon credit team in Australia, it's really the start of something amazing. If any of you are high net worths, I would start to consider putting some carbon credits into your portfolio. This company tokenizes carbon credits and allows people to buy them, and then when you go to shops and buy a stake, you can offset your carbon and then hold it and sell it later and make money. And this one was incorporated in Australia. In all these cases, we'll bring the team to Bali. We'll have this one wasn't because of COVID, but we'll bring the team to Bali, have a little sort of week-long workshop, work out what is the branding going to look like. The branding, like my branding team is pretty good. They did all of this, Vita Carbon, this, the Sashas. It's pretty, right? It's beautiful stuff. And people often forget that. My partner was going to be here. Her name's Rebecca. She works with me on this, and we're partners in this company, Hatch, which launches those other companies. So that's based in Indonesia, and that's the company that holds these week-long sort of workshops. She had a baby in Indonesia, and she had a midwife coming, but the midwife was 20 minutes late, and so she delivered her baby herself with no drugs at home. It was awesome. Her husband was there. I was like, did the husband deliver the baby? She's like, no, I did it. So she's a total badass. And we've worked with, these three are sort of the ones that we did here while we were in green school. There was a lady here who did beautiful rugs, play rugs for children. Marika Snellerman, her name was, a Dutch lady, and was selling them in the green school in Australia and in some other places. And I gave her some money and backed that, and that's kind of, fallen by the wayside. But it was still a wonderful, wonderful company. Again, it wasn't going to be a huge company, but I saw my little 4-year-old playing on this play rug, and I thought I really wanted to help her with her business, so I gave her a little bit of money for that. And it was kind of a learning for me because I lost the money. But what was just lovely is, making these crochet toys, making the play rugs, designing the play rugs, going up to Surabaya and meeting the team. And then there was a team of women making all the play rugs, and then 2 guys took over the team and said, right, we've unionized and now we want more money. So she sacked those 2 guys and then dealt only with the women, which was way better than those 2 guys. So all of these things is a super amazing learning experience. I always say to people, if you're going to spend 20, it's not 20 these days, 50 to 100 grand on an MBA, don't do it. Just start your own business and learn all about sort of labor disputes with all of the guys, which is even more fun in Indonesia because it's more difficult to deal with a different culture in terms of labor. Manufacturing, shipping, all of the stuff with Sasha's. Shipping a container from Bali to Singapore is just a big, fat headache. but you learn it all, and it keeps you super busy, and it's very, very interesting. So what I'd say just before I sort of finish and ask for some questions is, often the first question I ask is, what do you need to do? Do you need to make money? Do you want to make money? Do you not need to make money? Because that sometimes has a bearing of what you're going to start. I'm a big fan of starting little companies, and I'm a big fan of just having, a small thing that you like and that provides you, a pretty nice return, but that you're happy with. My company before that I sold ended up with 300 people in it, and it just got too big. And I thought, I wish if I did it again, I'd have 20 people and just do some cool work with 20 guys. So think about, if you want to start small. What I would say if you're starting small, all of the stuff you heard, you can totally ignore it for two reasons. One, because the first thing you start is going to be building prototypes and coming up with ideas and plans. That can take you 6 months where you don't need to spend any money or engage with these guys. Secondly, you can ignore it because they know all about it, right? Whenever I talk to people starting companies, especially women starting companies, they're like, look, I really want to make beautiful dresses, but I don't want to do tax, I don't want to do accounting, I don't want to do corporate structuring, I don't want to learn about Indonesian laws. When you work with academics, they want to learn it all, right? They're like, no, I'm going to learn all about law myself. And I'm like, are you crazy? You're insane. Like, the best thing about starting businesses now, and it's not just this, like, it will cost a little more than doing it yourself, but it's 100% worth it because you don't want the headache. So you'd engage either one of these guys to do it. And that's a big bit taken care of. If people have another fear of technology, how do you build some people don't know how to build a website and how technology works. Although most people can Instagram, so sometimes I say, forget the website, just do Instagram. But there's a lot of companies who can take that away from you, who can take all of the stuff you don't want. And over again, people quit their businesses because what they used to love, which was making beautiful wedding cakes, has become an admin headache of all of the tax they forgot to file and all of that shit. If you have a partner who likes that, Lydia does none of this, my wife Lydia. I do all of her admin-y shit because I know she hates it. And I hate it, but I hate it a little less than she does. And I'm an accountant, so I should know what I'm doing. But having a little team around you, the first thing if you have a good idea is start to tell people. Because then they'll hold you accountable to it, and then you'll have other ideas. Include your partner. Some people fight about it, but it's quite nice if you can work together or if you have complementary skills. But after 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you might be doing it illegal, okay? But when it starts to get big, that's when you legalize it, and you can do that very quickly and easily. And so your objective is to get rid of all the things that are preventing you from doing what you love, which is making the cakes, making dresses, teaching people how to keep fit, with dance or whatever it is. And that's what you love doing. And now more than ever, you can get rid of all the other things. So don't be afraid to sort of start. And once you start something, don't be afraid to think that it can be a big thing. Like this little vegan snack lady, I was surprised at the money she was making. And don't be ashamed or afraid of making money. You should be if you're a good person, you should be making as much as you can because you're going to do good things with that money. There's a lot of volume to be had. Like I think those cheese things are going to go super well. So that's what I would sort of say. It's focus on what you think you love. It's not necessarily about the idea, because even if you have like a idea that you think is kind of shitty, like I knew nothing about this carbon credit stuff, and I learned all about it when we set this company up with this. The guy who set it up's a banker. He works for HSBC all his life, and he was just a 50-year-old guy thinking, I'm sick of HSBC. I want to do something meaningful. And I think a lot of people, when they come to Bali, have that, right? They quit their job that they don't really like, and they come here and rethink things. And that's when you can start doing, more purpose-driven work. And he executes like a total legend because he's an amazing, bank exec who all his life's been doing wonderful things. But there's a lot of happiness to be had from however small you are. So that's sort of what I would say is, don't be afraid of starting anything small. Don't be afraid of thinking it can get big. Don't be afraid of any of the things you don't understand. When men start businesses, if they don't know something, they're like, oh, who gives a shit if I don't know? And women tend to kind of worry about it. But I would say that's one of the reasons I think that a lot of women don't start companies. And we see a formula that happens a lot where you get these dudes starting companies, and then the company gets big, and then they hire some woman to be the COO, like Sheryl Sandberg, for example, and then she takes that company and does really well with it, which is fantastic, right? But then he sells the company and makes $10 million, and she makes $500,000, which is fine. It was his idea, and he started it. but you don't need those guys. I think those guys exist because their ego propels them into a space where they think they can do something. But I think that sometimes, you know, and I get accused of being sexist, but I think sometimes women who think, you know, that, you know, women who are this good think they're this good. Men who are this good think they're this good, right? And so if you recognize that, and if you get a team around you to do whatever you don't want to do and focus on what you do want to do, there's a really good way of starting things. And now more than ever, you know, I was always scared of Indonesia. I thought, my God, what's going to happen if all my money if the government becomes somehow weird and I lose all my money? But I get more and more confident every time I hear this man speak. And I get confident because I know that if I go buy a piece of land or if I go start a company, I can run it by these guys and they'll say, yeah, that sounds good, or all that sounds dodgy, because there are some old school people who are still living in a dodgy world. So that's sort of where I've come from. Nearly all of my projects, when this fund gets going, nearly all my projects will be bigger projects. I nearly always talk to a lot of people about starting their little companies and sometimes helping them how to think about it. But a lot of the time, you can just do it. If you've got some business that you're making something, go and do a prototype. That's step one. Once you've got the prototype, then you can do something with that. But there's a lot of that. That's a lot of time, you know, and that's a lot of purposeful, you know, interactions with local Balinese. It's lots of interactions with other people, and it's lots of sort of, you know, great happiness. And just to sort of end what I'm saying, I think that starting these things can be real therapy. You know, it can be a real purpose, and it can be super fun. You know what I mean? It can change my cousin's life from having a hard time in Kenya to in Uganda to having a great time in Uganda, and doing great things and feeling good about, you know, she hasn't made herself a millionaire, but she's provided jobs and all sorts of other things. So that's that. The end. I need a proper ending.
You need a proper ending?
Sort of, you know, and that's the end of my talk.
Thank you, Luke.
Cool.
We have questions for Luke? Chris Thompson, of course. Let me not cross in front of the camera. I was already warned to don't do that. So.
Thanks, Luke. So two questions. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Can we re-record that?
Yeah, good.
So thanks, Luke.
Got it.
So two questions. Say, for example, so you said these three businesses, and let's take the Sasha one, which you say, you know, isn't making money and things like that. And but say, for example, that was your life, and you had to be here, and you had to survive on that, because that is the reality for most people. Most people don't get to say, oh, you know, if it doesn't make money, I'm okay. I mean, that is a sliver of this community, and the number one reason, as you said, that people leave here is because they can't afford to stay here. Yeah. So changing it a little bit, if that had to make money and had to make more money, could you do it? And are you just allowing it to happen just because of the context of the business? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah, and then the second question is, I just like to get a little bit of an understanding when you're saying, like, you put in this amount of money. Sometimes people think, oh, that's $1 million. Sometimes people think it's $500,000. I mean, when you put in money, was it $5,000, $10,000? I think it's nice for people to get some numbers in their head about what it means to start a business. So, yeah.
So when we start businesses with Hatch, this is Hatch, which I run with Rebecca, and so she does all of these, you know, the branding. And so when we do a little business starting week, we used to do that at my old company and charge $100,000 for it. At Hatch, we charge $25,000 for it. That's still a lot for a lot of people. So if it's a good idea, sometimes I'll pay that $25,000 and I'll take a nice chunk of their company. You can't have both, right? If you haven't got any money and you start a company and someone gives you money, they own some of your company. You can do it all yourself. Like all the stuff we do at Hatch, sometimes if someone comes to me and I know they can't afford the money, I go and tell them how to do it all themselves. That'll generally take them twice as long, but some people have that time. Sometimes it ends up taking time and money for them as well. But I would say if you don't have any money and you want to start something and you've got a good eye for design, you can learn, if you wanted to learn fairly quickly how to build a website on Wix or Squarespace, you can do that for very cheap. You can set up your own domain name, like your whatever .com you want, and with your email, you know, Luke at mangosteenvs.com, which we set up, and Rebecca does that all for me. But you can learn all that stuff and save all that money. Similar with these guys. You can incorporate all yourself and go online and do it yourself. But that's not your business. Your business isn't setting up websites and dealing with all this complicated shit. Your business is doing your business. So you do have to have a little bit of money, or someone who believes in you to give you a bit of money to help you. But then you have to give them that money back somehow. Maybe if the company's going to stay small, it would be sort of debt. And BIC do this. They do venture debt, so that if you make revenues, you give them X% of your revenues for a long time until that money's paid back. With things like Beta Carbon, we put in less than 100,000 to launch the whole thing, which was one permanent person and then a whole bunch of other people working. But then the guy who ran it went and talked to a bunch of his friends, and he raised $1 million in a week, right? But he was networked like crazy. But he was also in the beginning of a really amazing space. Again, digital banking is also the same, right? Digital banks you've seen these things like Revolut make a lot of money, so you can justify, if you're going to an investor, give me some money, because it might get as big as Revolut, and if it does, then you'll make out like a bandit and blah, 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 blah. So I think if you had a business, however small here, you'd want to have a few $1,000 to just get stuff working, even if you did it yourself, right? You've got to go and build the prototypes and pay for stuff. You want to keep all the records of what you've spent as well, so you can kind of know the true cost of it all. But there's some really nice businesses that can happen in Bali and make quite a lot of money. Like there's a lot of fashion businesses. There's a lot of swimwear. There's a lot of, the simplest possible thing is, if you live in Norway, find something that's really amazing here, send it to Norway, and import export. That's not that difficult. Or doing what you're good at here. There's a ton of wellness, and there's a lot of people make a lot of money. My friend went out of banking and into yoga, and I was like, how are you going to make any money in yoga when everyone's doing yoga? This was in Melbourne. And he just applied lots of different thinking to it. He gave free Wi-Fi, he did different incentives for the yoga teachers. Free mat. He did a whole bunch of things that didn't sound like much, but now he's got 3 yoga centers and he's making a nice load of money from it. So it can start super small. Even these big ones start small. Our whole methodology at Mangosteen, this fund of mine, is that we'll start a business for less than 50K. And it'll look, like a real business. We won't necessarily even incorporate. Like, we won't even set up a company. And with all these we have, and generally before you raise money you do, but you can get all the branding done before that. You can do all of the LinkedIn stuff. It can look like a serious, real company. Then if it's in an interesting space and they like the team, and you can put a couple of nice, interesting guys together on the team, you might raise a bit of money if they think you can execute and grow it, if that's what you want to do. If you raise venture capital money, you're on a track of growing your company and selling your company. But not everyone wants to do that. If you just want to grow your company a bit, let's say you want to open a factory, maybe then you'd get some debt, from someone like BIC, or, we're going to be doing a bit of venture debt as well. And then because I know that, there are companies where they say, if I only had a bigger factory, I could get more volume, and then I could get more revenue. That's, funding a factory, that's kind of a nice thing to do, because you know what it costs, and you can see that there's going to be returns with the sales of whatever they're doing. So it doesn't have to be expensive, and the experimental, exploratory stages doesn't have to be expensive at all, while you're sort of working out who will help you make your bikinis, or who will help you make your cakes, or who will do whatever you're doing. But then as it starts to grow, you've just got to recognize when it gets bigger. And when it gets bigger, then you call these guys and engage these guys. If it gets bigger and you need to build some tech, I've got a friend who's working in NFTs. There's a guy in green school who's super expert at NFTs. So you go find him and say, hey, can I build this digital art gallery with NFTs? And he'll say, yeah, it'll cost you 30 grand. Then you go with his invoice to some investors and say, I want to do NFTs. There's plenty of NFT investors out there. I want to start a digital art gallery. Here's my story. I need 200 grand, 30 of which is going to pay for this tech. And then you might get the money. And if the thing goes bust, you don't have to pay that money back. But you probably won't raise money from them again. But you know what I mean? There's different things you can do. And some of I suppose, the mistakes I've seen is people who raise money but then don't have a vision for where it's going to scale. Like, know what, you got to know what to look for compared to, what you're doing. So on this, my website is mangosteenvs.com, which is mangosteenventurestudio.com. And on it, I've got a blog there which has a lot of questions that people ask. Should I have a co-founder? Yes, you should have a co-founder. Don't be doing it alone. If you're doing it alone, you're lonely. Just have someone to talk to about it. So, and don't be afraid of that guy. And then what percentage of the company should I give the co-founder? Women are very sensible about this, and it happens very easily. But when you get 2 men talking about it, their ego is like, well, I want 41%. And then they start these fights, which is irrelevant because it's worth nothing until it's worth something. So should I get a co-founder? What sort of percent of the company should I get the co-founder to get? My answer would be none, because don't set the company up until it's already sort of starting to make a little bit of money. And there's just a lot of questions. Should I try and patent my stuff? No, because you don't have money for lawyers. And even if you did have money for lawyers and then someone infringes your patent, you're not going to sue them because you haven't got any money. So it's a total another waste of time and money, right? If you're doing some complex machinery, maybe. And there are some things like this that I see that are on my blog site, which is just sometimes I see silly mistakes like that. And you sort of meet somebody again and they're like, oh yeah, we've almost finished protecting our patent and it's taken me 4 months and I spent $4,000 on it. And you're just thinking you've just wasted all of your time when you could have been executing on your business. So there's a few practical examples like that. Talking to lots of people. There's so many people at the Green School who've done so much, who you can talk to and who have built businesses that have got big and have built businesses that, the guy, the Blair, the Island Organics is huge, Big Tree Farms is huge. These are big, serious companies. So it can be done. And then there's, like I said, also some smaller companies that are ticking over really nicely, some nice fashion labels that are fantastic. And, I spoke to a woman last weekend who has a fashion brand, and she's making over $1 million a year in revenues from selling her fashion in America, in LA, that she bakes here. So there's lots of different things you can do. Have a look at some of those questions because I get the same questions over and over again, which is why I write a little blog article about them. Or come grab me. I'm in here every day. It's wonderful being in here. And then you just go and get the Cool Farm to bring you your lunch. It's totally kick-ass. And then you can have a few little conversations too. So I'm always happy to help, whoever it is. With this Mangosteen fund, we try to support female CEOs. Not because I necessarily think they need support, but I think that it's way easier to deal with them. They're much more sensible. They have less ego. And usually they come in to grow the business anyway, and I don't necessarily need the egomaniacal 20-year-old men in the way. I can just engage straight with those women and help them to grow it. But we don't only support women. We do support lots of people. But what we always do is it's always purpose-driven stuff. If you're doing some company and it's purpose-driven, then everyone really wants to work with you. That Beta Carbon company, we've had so many people say that they really want a job because they give a shit about the environment. They can go home and tell their parents and their kids, I'm doing something that's really, really helpful. It's going to make a ton of cash too, which is kind of the dirty secret. But the purpose really kind of galvanizes everyone around what you're doing. If you're doing amazing things, people want to work with you. And if you're doing good things, and don't be afraid if you're doing something good to make money from it, because if you're the one doing good things making money, then it stops people doing shitty things and making money.
Thanks, Luke. Are there any other questions?
Yes, that was awesome, Luke. And you said something that's it's so true, like in this community there is so much knowledge, there is so much. And I think everybody here has felt already the power of how people stand up and will help you when you need help, So I think this is something really powerful that I love about Green School is that if you need something, if you need help, just raise your hand and ask for help because a lot of people will just come to help, So that was a good call. And thank Luke. I really enjoy to have you here on a daily basis. You're our best client here at the bridge. Every day, never fails a day.
It shouldn't be like I drop off the kids, stay here until 2:30, and then I go home and play with it. Like my work day is never more than 2:30 because it's all here, and you have loads of great stuff here. I'm surprised that you need more people to come in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I mean, it's slowly starting, but yeah, really good and really good example. I was just thinking about the bridge. The bridge is not a business inside of the school, as you all know. But when we set it up, we had to have this business mindset because everything that starts at Green School as a social enterprise does have the goal to become self-sustainable. So I don't need to make money, but I need to make enough money to sustain myself, And that was the best thing. It was actually to do it. How much I have learned through the process. First, setting up Student Village, and here with the bridge, and having Chris helping. It was just something that, when I move out from here one day, I can feel that it was not just something that was very purpose-driven for me, but it just brought me a lot of knowledge, you know. If I hadn't do the whole thing myself, you know, website and these and spreadsheets, you know, now I'm a master in spreadsheets. Who could believe? But I agree with you, you know, to just go and do it. It's.
And I see guys like Carol every day. I love them. But usually what happens is they're super high energy, they're efficient, they execute like legends, and they're working for someone else. They're making someone else money, right? Often they're in corporate world, right? And they're slogging their guts out in corporate world. And, you know, half the time with this, I just try and find those people and say, wouldn't you like to start your own company? Sometimes I have to do that for over 2 years, and then finally they get sick of it. But if you really are working super hard and pushing forward, if you're making that money for someone else, it better be purpose-driven, because, you know, and you better be learning. Because if you really are a great executor, I think it's kind of a little bit of a secret that if you start your own thing, it makes you way happier and way richer. And you've got a lot of flexibility. You do work harder. But I see, if you're one of those people who just is a real go-getter and really kind of smashes it and does super well, don't be afraid to start, you know, to start something. It's really, if it goes totally and utterly bust in a year, it's 100% worth it. You know, that's the worst.
Good to know.
That's the worst thing that can happen, and it's already, you know, really, really worth doing.
Yeah, I agree, Luke. Good to know. And my purpose now, it's probably graduating my kids, yeah? So I do have a purpose. And also the community and everything.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, for being here today. It was special for me. I hope it was special and useful for you guys as well.